Well, welcome back, Irish fans, to Breaking Down Braves Boys podcast. Today, we're going to kind of go over a lot of the storylines that went on the last week. A lot of new stuff broke. Nothing groundbreaking, but some stuff. But the main thing we got today is a new host. So glad to welcome on Trevor. You want to tell us a little bit about yourself before we get started?
Yeah, man. I was born in South Bend. I moved down to Florida. So when I was like 6, so I can't say I go to a lot of games. I watch just about every game I can, but I've always loved Irish basketball. When I saw your show and that you actually covered the team, because I think they deserve more coverage, I knew I had to join in on this thing. So thank you for having me.
For sure. Glad to have you, and I'm sure the people will see you around a lot over the next few months. So looking forward to that.
Hopefully, yeah.
But I guess to start out, we'll go over Notre Dame's newest hire on the staff, Antoni Wyche, former Notre Dame player, defensive-minded assistant with good energy, and a guy who has a good amount of stuff on his track record. But Trevor, you want to give your thoughts on him first before I kind of go into mine?
Yeah, for sure. I'm right there with you, dude. I love to hear the fact that he was a former ND guy, team captain his senior year, so he knows what we're about and everything like that. Obviously, can lead people. I looked at some of the things that he's had going on recently. He had an interview going on in May where they asked him what he enjoyed most about coaching, and he actually said player development, which I thought was a really cool thing because I feel like you don't hear that much. But I also feel it's something an ND really needs. I almost wish he was here when this now going to be their senior year class was freshman. But, I mean, either way, I'm still really glad to have him, and hopefully he can bring that along with some defense to this team. So,
absolutely.
What about you, man?
A lot of guys that he's developed throughout his career, Patriot League, high academic guys who have turned out to be all league. And then obviously CJ McCollum, which I'm sure that's too much with, though, because he averaged 19 as a freshman, but still great.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, then he can point to the fact that it's cool that he got him to go there, recruiting wise, because I saw that he was big on recruiting him. So, I mean, I also like the fact that they asked him what his ultimate goal was in coaching. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people say it, but to hear him say head coach, I thought was really cool too, because obviously he's an ambitious guy. He's going to give it your all because he's looking to impress people and continue to move on. So,
for sure. And he had a head coaching interview too a few years ago, which was really good to see that.
Did he really? See, I didn't see that. That's really cool too. That's really cool too. Really?
Looked him up on Twitter, and that's the first thing that popped up. But
no kidding. That's cool.
I also found a video of him coaching, and it seems like the intensity he has is a lot more than what we've got from guys like Ryan Ayers and Scott Martin and guys like that. So good to see they're adding more guys like him and Solomon to the staff who can really get after the guys and change the way practice is run. But speaking of Solomon, the staff now is Anthony Solomon, Ryan Humphrey, Wyche, Scott Martin, and then Rob Balanis and Harold Swanigan moved to, I guess, the office administration type of roles. No more Rod Balanis on the court, which I did like Balanis, but I'm sure.
I like Balanis as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think they could do a little bit better than Balanis, but I did like him. Good to see he's still with the program, though, and that's one of the most stacked staffs I think Bray's ever had. I don't know if you agree with that, but I don't think he's had many better staffs in the past decade.
No, I agree. I mean, when Solomon first left, I thought to myself, that's the kind of guy that you obviously don't want to go out the door. And then when we rehired him, you got to see what all the former players said about him, and that was really cool too. So, again, obviously I wish he was around for this now senior class, but since we're already right there, I think on the cusp of being something really good, I think him and Wyche are two guys that I think can really get this team to where it needs to be. So it is nice to have him back. I'd agree with you on the coaching staff for sure.
Sure. I don't know if they have a successor on that staff that I necessarily love. Maybe Humphrey. Not a huge fan of having those other two as successors to Bray, but definitely a staff with really good assistants. So love to see that.
Right. Yeah, it's crazy that we're getting to that point of thinking who's coming in for Bray next. But yeah, I'd agree with you. I'm not really sure out of any of them really if I'd take them as the next head coach. But the next few years will show us that anyways. So
for sure. So I guess we'll move to recruiting now. It's recruiting season, so going to go over a few things that happened this week. Nothing monumental, but Notre Dame did get its first official visitor of the class. Dom Campbell just posted his pictures from the visit, which is some small, but it's exciting to see in this day and age. But Notre Dame's really picked things up with Campbell lately. First official visit of the summer, obviously, where I just watched him this weekend at the NEPSAC Invitational. And I think this morning he got bumped into the top 50 by ESPN. So no longer the most underrated prospect that Notre Dame or on Notre Dame's plays with Middlesex Magic, former program of Pat Connaughton and Cormac Ryan for AAU. Love his game. I'll go over that more in a second. But any thoughts on Campbell and his official visit?
I mean, I think he fits the ND mold as a big perfectly. I think we do need a guy with, a little bit more height to him. But I think he makes up for it in different ways. He's got a really good feel for the game, a nice jumper, and his body's big enough to bang down low. So, he does make up for it. It would be nice if he was like 6'11" or something like that, but I'll absolutely take it. I'm glad you brought up the fact that he jumped into that 150 because I was going to mention the fact that there were people who believed he deserved to be in the 150. So that I didn't know he jumped into it. That's really cool to hear. Obviously, I believe he needs to be in there, but I like the fact that he wasn't in it at the time just because he's like one of those sneaky guys that ND can pick up on. But if you look at his offer list right now, obviously, and the places he's been visiting, obviously he's, a hot commodity. So hopefully he sees the fit like I do for him. But I'd really like to see him in Irish green.
For sure. I mean, Notre Dame was the first high major to offer him, so I'm sure that means something to him as well. But like you said, it kind of fits the mold of what Notre Dame wants in a big inside-out guy. Kind of like Matt Zona at that age, but I think he's a lot more polished than Zona was, especially on the offensive end. Doesn't move – well, he moves all right, moves better than Zona did at that age. But good physicality, really good basketball IQ. Constantly see him setting up his teammates, moving without the ball. But just love a lot of things about Campbell's game. And I think he could actually – maybe get minutes at Notre Dame as a freshman if things line up the way I think they could, and assuming he commits, which we'll see. But Notre Dame's definitely in a nice spot with him now, especially for the visit. Hopefully things went well. I haven't heard anything, but we'll see. Any closing thoughts on him before we move on?
For sure. I mean, I thought this, getting him in was a big thing for us because just by going over some of his interviews, it didn't seem like they had they were talking to him, but I didn't think they took like those big steps with him yet. So to get him in, hopefully we wowed him in every way possible. But I like what he thinks of himself when he was asked to describe himself as a player. He said he's a blue-collar guy, plays hard on offense and defense, considers himself very versatile, comfortable with the ball in his hands, and he can set other players up. So that, to me, screams Notre Dame. Hopefully Bray gets this one. So
for sure. I like what you talked about. Actually, I don't know. I was just thinking it when you were talking, but I like his coordination a lot. You don't see that with bigs at his level a whole lot. Even like Matt Zona, I don't know if you watched his junior tape, but when Matt Zona was junior, you would kind of see him and you'd be like, wow, this guy's a little awkward, doesn't move super well, but Campbell's really coordinated, just looks really comfortable with the ball in his hands. That's what you said that kind of takes me off to that. But that's what I have for Campbell. Really love everything that has happened with him in the last few months, and hopefully he put some stock into that visit and the fact that Notre Dame was the first high major to offer before like 20 other schools jumped in the mix. So
right. Hopefully that stands out for sure.
For sure. So moving on to an unofficial visitor, JJ Starling came on his second unofficial, I was told. Assuming he would have went on an official if he didn't go to Lalu, which is like an hour by campus. I think it's just more convenient to do a couple unofficials. Maybe he'll do one for a football game, but ranked 37th in the class by ESPN today. Recently picked up a Duke offer. Like I said last week, I'm not super high on Notre Dame's chances here, but great to see him on campus, especially considering he lives – or I don't even know if he lives there. I think he lives in New York, but goes to school about an hour from campus. So love JJ Starling as a prospect. Just hoping Notre Dame can make a play here. Any thoughts on JJ?
I mean, I really just watched his highlights, and that is a dude that, you saying he got a Duke offer makes a lot of sense. because if you watch his highlights, it's he belongs at a place like Duke. But obviously if we're in the mix, I hope he ends up picking ND. It'd be thinking about who we'd be losing in the next few years, like Prentice and Dane and stuff like that. He's a guy who you can put the ball in his hands and make things happen, and that's what we'd be losing in Prentice. I think Bray kind of likes those guys who are kind of combo guards right now, and he fits that bill perfectly. And I think he'd be somebody who we could kind of consider as a number one guy, which I don't know if we have right now, scoring wise. So I'd love to get him, obviously. But like you said, he's getting some big time offers, and we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, for sure. I think he boosted his value a lot this summer. Well, earlier in the spring, mostly when he picked up the Duke offer, had a really nice spring with, I think, Team Takeovers, who he plays for. But at Lalu, I noticed he played a lot more off the ball, got a lot better on the defensive end, and overall just improved by going to prep school. So I'd recommend that for some guys, and he's definitely a guy that I think benefited from it. Notre Dame did not necessarily benefit from that with him getting more attention, but good for JJ, great for Notre Dame.
Definitely.
But moving on to Notre Dame's other guard, Rodney Rice. Notre Dame just made the top 6. I wasn't even sure Notre Dame was really making a run at Rodney, but I think they are if they're on this list. Notre Dame's got a lot of connections here. I think it's his dad or his grandpa is really close with some staff members. Rice goes to DeMatha, which obviously Notre Dame has some deep-rooted connections in there. Definitely. With Bray being a former assistant. And I think Ryan Humphrey went there for high school, so definitely a lot of connections there. And I think if Notre Dame tries to make a run at Rodney, they could definitely be in the mix. Other schools like Virginia Tech also have DeMatha connections, though, maybe even deeper connections than Notre Dame does. And then he also has a future cast to Louisville. So Rice's recruitment is a little up in the air right now. I don't know that Notre Dame is in a great spot, but I think they might be towards the upper half of that top 6. I really love Rodney Rice as a prospect. Personally, I think I like him more than J.J. Starling, even if Starling's ranked a little higher. But I love the way Rodney Rice is able to control the game. You'll see him probably score like 20, and he'll have like 2 turnovers, which Notre Dame has not been used to recently. With Prentice, right. Not a shot at him, just Rice is a completely different type of point guard. Floor general, can really set his teammates up really smooth, and I love his size too. A lot to like with Rodney Rice, not as much of a combo guard. I think Starling's a little bit better off the ball. Starling's also probably a better shooter, but I like Rice's ability to kind of control the game, be a floor general better, and I think he's a little more smooth than Starling. Anything on him? I don't know if he was one of the guys that you didn't have as much with.
I didn't have as much on JJ. I just saw JJ's highlights. I'm with you, though, on the fact that I didn't know if we would get into the top 6 with Rodney for sure. Just kind of hearing some of his interviews and stuff like that, it didn't seem like he had a whole lot to say about Notre Dame. Not saying that, what all that means. But I was surprised to see that we were in that mix. I'd agree with you on the fact that he is probably the better playmaker than JJ for sure. If you watch his highlights, man, he makes, just nice, smooth passes, gets the ball where it needs to be. One-handed, off-handed. Little things like that, you kind of go, dang, like he can make any pass at any time, and obviously the turnovers have been a big thing right now with just the ND offense in general. So to have somebody that can just, take the rock, run the offense through him and not have to worry about, if he can handle it or not. That's a big thing right now. Hopefully we can convince him that he'd be moving right into like some, big time minutes, because looking at the roster and the way Bray's playing right now, we have so many guards and people who can play off ball that he could probably slide right in once Prentice is gone for sure and play some minutes. So hopefully that's enticing. As far as the DeMatha connections, I don't know if we're if that's going to be enough. I don't know. I don't know what he's interested in the school, but hopefully it's the academics and things like that are interesting to him, and we can make a big push here.
For sure. Like you brought up with the minutes, I was looking at the roster for when he would be a sophomore. The only guards on the roster would be him, Blake Wesley, Alex Wade, and then I guess J.R. Knesny, if you consider him a guard, and then not really many other guys. Cormac would be gone, Trey would be gone, Dane would be gone, Brown would be gone. So
I'd take Rodney Rice.
Yeah, I would take Rodney Rice. I don't know if Notre Dame would necessarily take a commitment from both, but I think if either of them wanted in, you'd have a hard time turning them down, especially if you don't get a guy like Brown. But I think those are their top two priorities at the guard spot. Maybe Jameel Brown is also in that mix, but those are two guys that I would love to have on the team. I think Rice is I don't think he's as good of a scorer or a shooter as Starling, but I think he makes up for it in other ways. And overall, I kind of like him better as a prospect, even though I don't think I used to. Just glad Notre Dame got in the mix here. But that's all I have for Rice. I guess we'll move on to a guy that Notre Dame may not be prioritizing as much, a guy they just offered this week. Denver Anglin, I think is how you say his last name. Just a good shooter, under control, good passer. Doesn't necessarily jump off the screen at me, especially at 6'2", but I think he's a nice backup plan at the point guard spot, assuming that's what he is. Any thoughts on him and what you thought when they offered him?
He's another one of those guys where I was hoping we'd kind of get to him a little sooner than we did, just because even though he's, I believe, a 3-star on most things, to me, he I don't know what's keeping him from being a 4-star, but I think he has the capabilities of being a 4-star, kind of an overlooked guy. They have him as an elite shooter, which if you watch his highlights, you know for sure that he is. He's 6'2", so that's not, that's pretty good, size-wise at the point spot. I think he runs his team really well as well. Again, he'd be rolling right into, big-time minutes for us, and he's somebody that I wish we kind of got in earlier on because I think he can play in the ACC as well. Maybe not as well as a Rodney or JJ, but like that as a back option, I think he's nice. So hopefully we make a big push and make things happen.
Yeah, I'm gonna disagree with that last part a little bit. I think if you can get JJ or Rodney, I think we're done with Denver because I think you kind of need those guys to.
No, I agree with you. Yeah, there for sure.
Yeah, I think Anglin's kind of a backup plan at this point, but I think you're in a decent spot if that's your third option at point guard and you have to take him. Have to. I think that you're in a good spot there. And Notre Dame, I don't think Notre Dame has necessarily benefited from that erratic play at point guard at times. I'm sure Hub has definitely helped them in games like Florida State and all that, but having a guard like any of these three who can really slow it down and doesn't turn the ball over much would be much welcomed. So any other thoughts on the 2022 point guards or Anglin at all before we move on?
I think Ronnie and JJ definitely belong in a league like the ACC. And I think their style in general, I think they could, come in and contribute right away. So like you're saying, I think those should definitely be the 1 and 2 on our list. I think Denver can end up playing ACC basketball just fine as well. But I'd take any one of them, I'd take any one of them.
For sure. I mean, Anglin got also a Miami offer like a couple hours after Notre Dame, so it definitely proves he can be an ACC type guy. Moving on to 2023, don't have much news here. Xavier Booker was offered by Notre Dame. Lots of other offers. I think he has an Indiana offer, Ohio State, Purdue, then a few other big ones. And he's 2023, so really early in his recruitment process still. Haven't got to watch as much of him as I would have liked to. Doesn't have that much tape out there. I'm sure you have the same issue. I think we talked about that before, but from what I saw, there's a ton of potential there. Far from a finished product heading into his junior year. Still has to fill out his frame a little bit and just get a little bit better overall. But you can definitely see what all these staffs see in him. And, he can stretch the floor a little bit. Just looks so much better than the other bigs he's facing too. So a lot to like. Any thoughts on him? I don't know if we have as much for Xavier Booker, and I don't think we will for a little bit until maybe he plays his junior year.
Right. I don't have all that much on him. I'd love to see, again, kind of him, video of him with the ball in his hands and how comfortable he looks and that stuff. Just because obviously ND kind of likes to include their bigs that way. He's an athletic guy. I think that's somebody that we don't usually really get at Notre Dame as, from the big position. I think Zach August is like the last big guy I can remember that, would catch lobs or, just little things like that. Or be a rim protector, a true one. Jawan obviously blocked a lot of shots, which is nice. But I think he kind of fits into that kind of mold. Just someone who's a rim protector, can go up get lobs. Right now, as as the video comes out, hopefully we can see more of his regression. But that's all I got. Hopefully, he's an Indiana kid. I'd love to keep him in state, but I think he's looking more towards IU or Ohio State or Purdue.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is the type of guy you go after early in the class, see if there's any interest, not necessarily what they've done with like Jalen Washington going late in the class, but if you go early with a guy like this, you don't have much to lose. So I think it's fine they offered him,
Right.
but there's still a lot to be seen with his recruitment, everything like that. But anything else on recruitment before we head into our last topic of the day?
No, sir, not on my end.
All right, so the last big piece of news, I guess, besides NIL, which I'll probably post an article about tomorrow, Notre Dame drew Illinois in the ACC Big Ten Challenge. For me, I like the draw. Good for Notre Dame to play a middle of the pack team rather than a top of the league game like they got with Ohio State last year, which somehow they almost won, or 2 years ago against Maryland, which they did not almost win. It would be a nice resume builder, but not an unwinnable game, which I think is what you want to strive for. And in an event like this, should be fun to see Curbelo versus Hubdo, two of the most like erratic playmaking guards in the country, go head to head. If they're both on, that's must-see TV. Any thoughts on this matchup?
I think you nailed it right there. I love both the point guards. I don't know if Hub will be guarding him. I'm interested to see who we do stick on him to try and slow that guy down, because obviously with Ayo or Io, I don't know how you say it, but with him gone, he's going to be taking over the reins there. So whoever we can put in front of him to stop him, he was Big Ten all-freshman team, Big Ten six-man of the year. Obviously, he's got potential to keep going. But like you said, if him and Prentice are both on, that is a fun game to watch for sure.
Stuff that to like with their guard spots, but with no Kofi, I think Notre Dame could really take advantage of the bigs, especially consider. I don't know how you feel about this, but I think probably two of their top three players is Atkinson and Lads. So Notre Dame could really take advantage down low, even though they haven't in years past. So that's a big opportunity for Notre Dame. We'll see how that plays out, and I'm sure we'll do more prep for that game when we get closer. So that's all I have. Any closing thoughts?
I'm also interested just to see how Notre Dame plays against another Big Ten school, high opponent. Obviously, on the non-conference schedule of things, we kind of look like we have a pretty good non-conference schedule, as I should say, actually. And I think it's a game that we kind of need another one of those games to show that we're getting over the hump and can actually really be something this year. So other than that, I got nothing.
All right, for sure. So thank you for coming on. We'll definitely try to have you on more in the future. Did a good job for your first episode. So thank you guys.
I appreciate it, man.
Yeah. Thank you guys for watching. Go Irish. Gonna have more videos out in the future, probably next week. So thanks for watching. Go Irish. Peace.